I feel like Playboi Carti is one of the most polarizing discographies in all of trap music, and at this point he has 3 projects, and he just dropped Whole Lotta Red back in 2020. So I think it's a good time to kind of revisit his whole catalog and look back on what his best album is.
Because he has a lot of stuff, and he has maybe a lot of projects that different fans may place in different areas. But guys, before we actually start the video, hit the subscribe button. We're connecting the world to hip-hop. And not only that, but leave your actual ranking of the discography. It's always cool to go in the comment sections and see what's up. But in my opinion, I do think there is a lot of range to his discography, regardless if, my subjective taste likes it or let's say it meets my standards. Because if you look at each one of the projects, and I mentioned this in the review that we had done, Carti reinvents himself with every single time he drops a project. I mean, if you start at the first, his first titled mixtape and go all the way up to Whole Lotta Red, 2 completely different sounds. But at number 3, I actually do want to talk about his second studio album, which is Whole Lotta Red, and this was anticipated for such a long time. It had executive production by Kanye West, and it features standout tracks such as, like, let's say Vamp Anthem, or even, let's say, Sky. So there was a lot of different things to this. What was the main takeaway for you with the project?
I feel like there was a big, issue with the pacing of the project, because it was 24 songs on the track list, and it was a brutal listen. I had such a hard time getting through it the first time, and with every listen, it just felt like it was torturous to listen to that whole album. I mean, yes, there were songs that I pulled out of it that I really enjoyed. I personally liked more of the lighter, softer tracks like Sky, Beano, Slayer.
Beano's nice.
Yeah, a lot of those productions are lighter, and Carti isn't as menacing with his tone. He's not like doing that screamo rap thing that you might catch on songs like Stop Breathing, which for me is just way too intense, and his vocals are just not on point at all.
And I find a lot of the time the productions did not meet his performance.
But the production was fire on
But
that
it
album.
was fantastic. Art Dealer did a fantastic job with this. I don't even think Kanye West had any producing credits on this at all. So maybe it was just like a little name throw there. But
add some hype, right?
Well, yeah. And then after that, he also had gifted him, I think it was a tank, something stupid like that for like the hype of the album. But regardless, whatever it is, I mean, it didn't feel like a Carti project to me. I always like going into a Carti project because there's a similar aesthetic throughout it, and I feel like it was just too over the place as far as sound says,
for sure.
And I think it was really due to the track list, because if you look back at previous Carti projects, they're not lengthy projects per se.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the most he's had was 17 with Die Lit, if I'm not mistaken.
Die Lit was 18, and okay. I believe self-titled was 15 songs. So
you added almost a whole 10 different songs on there. Like, that's almost a whole different album. So
not only that, yeah, sorry, but I was gonna say, not only that, but if you're gonna try to reinvent yourself with the whole punk aesthetic, then stick to that for the whole album. Don't give me a mix of a bunch of different sounds. If you're gonna go for that vibe, play it out and make that be kind of the whole aesthetic that you go with. But it just felt all over the place and didn't feel focused for me.
Well, apparently he is going to be changing his aesthetic up again. So he did hear the reception, and he did hear that the fan base was split on it. And we are Playboi Carti fans, so we will be reviewing anything that he drops. But let's move on to number 2. And this is actually his debut studio album, which is called Die Lit. It has the infamous, fucking beautiful, I would say, album cover to it, where someone's, diving off of the stage.
I think it's Carti himself, right? It's doing like a backflip.
I never knew that, by the way.
I'm pretty sure it's Carti doing a backflip, and you see a bunch of punk listeners that are in the audience just chilling there, and it's super iconic, and I feel like it's his best cover art. And I mean, that project to me is just definitely has his most stacked feature list.
That is true.
You have Nicki Minaj, you have Skepta, you have Lil Uzi Vert, Travis Scott. List goes on.
Shout out Young Nudie. Shout out
Young
Uzi.
Nudie was on there too.
That's fire.
And of course you had Pierre Bourne that took the majority of the production on there, which I love to see.
And it was actually the last project from Playboi Carti to be produced by Pierre Bourne. So maybe that was an indicator of quality as well.
Yeah, 100%. And what's kind of the sentiment that you get when you go into this album, when you kind of revisit it?
Zelda, I'm playing Zelda, and I say that for whenever the aesthetic did not change too much from, let's say, Playboi Carti to Die Lit. I find Die Lit was just it was everything Playboi Carti was. I feel like I'll talk about Playboi Carti when we get there, but what was nice about Die Lit was how consistent the track list was. I mean, I would go through and there would be like, you know, different songs at different places. So like you'd get songs like Shoota, then you get songs like Rest in Peace Fredo, and you know, the aesthetic was diverse, but it also made sense for Carti, because I find when Carti and Pierre Bourne come together, it forms that one aesthetic and they're allowed to move as one. I feel like I missed that with Whole Lotta Red, and it showed in the production quality. And Playboy's, you know, performance on Pierre Bourne beats are the best ever. Like, I don't think anyone else goes with Pierre Bourne like Playboi Carti does. So do you think maybe that was the main sort of setback between Whole Lotta Red and Die-Lit?
I mean, definitely, because, you know, Pierre Bourne only had, I think, 2 production credits on the whole album. But at the same time, I mean, I feel like Carti could have done better on those beats, so I wouldn't necessarily put it towards that. But look, for Die-Lit, for me, I feel like when I revisit that album, I don't listen to it in full, I'll be honest, but like it's like going back to one of my favorite movies and replaying my favorite scenes from that movie.
Okay, I get
because
you.
every different song is a different feeling, and I feel like he has some of his best collaboration tracks on there. You have Love Hurts with Travis Scott, where you
Fantastic.
kind of have a distorted beat and it's kind of playing on a loop. And on that song, what I appreciate is that there's good album sequencing on it, because you have Carti rapping like "Come in this bitch" with Lil Uzi, and the next song is Shoota with Lil Uzi. So it kind of just, it seemed planned out. It seemed like he had it really focused and mapped out. And I think that, you know, it also sounded much more polished than Playboi Carti, which, look, I don't mind that Playboi Carti sounded kind of more raw, but I feel like this was kind of his coming out party. It was his, you know, his first mainstream album, and he really delivered, man, from song to song.
He did deliver, and what was nice about it too was you didn't expect him to perform on a studio album like that. Like when I first heard Die-Lit, and I think this is the, you know, the sort of scenario with me whenever I go into a Playboi Carti album, I need multiple times to just digest it. I need to keep it in my rotation for a couple of weeks or even a month, just to understand, you know, the full aesthetic of it, the full vibe of it. And I found myself going back to different tracks over a period of time, and then essentially almost half of the album actually made my rotation. And I do agree with you. I won't go from start to finish, and I won't, you know, fully play it like that. But for what's in there, I think that I spend a lot of time in Die-Lit when I'm looking at Playboi Carti's discography and where I, you know, my listening stands. And that's what was crazy about the project, was that not only did it live up to the hype of the self-titled mixtape Playboi Carti, but it was actually able to create its own sound and stand its own and also have a completely different feel to it. But listen, talking about the self-titled mixtape, let's move on to number 1. And it is obviously Playboi Carti. When this dropped back in 2017, the whole fucking industry stopped. There was bangers like Woke Up Like This, you had Magnolia, you had Half and Half, you had Number 9, you had Location, and the list goes on. So what felt so special, about this mixtape?
For me, this was just Playboi Carti taking you on a joyride through his life, through the extravagant shit that he goes through on a daily basis. And, the whole album just feels like, you know, one huge ad-lib that just blends in with the beat. And what I love about this album is that it's so minimalistic.
It is.
There's not too much going on. The content matter isn't what takes precedence, but it doesn't need to, because you're literally there to get immersed into the sound and the music. And I mean, to me, it's just, if you look at like let's say the first 9 songs on that track list, it's banger after banger.
It's no skips. There's
starting off with Location with the Harry Fraud beat.
Yeah.
Who the fuck would expect the two of them to, you know, collaborate and make
it sounded perfect
heat?
Though, and it probably created one of his most iconic, you know, album intros. It is his most iconic album intro, and I liked it because
Long Time's really good too.
Long Time is good, but I mean, it was just nice to see Playboi Carti's presence on this. It didn't feel forced. It felt him just creatively making sounds. And, you know, it was obviously also the introduction to his iconic ad-libs, that got me going. And that's what I enjoyed about it. It was lighthearted fun. And especially in my hip hop listening back in 2017, it was cool because I mean, it was a breath of fresh air from everything else that was going on. I mean, if we look back at 2017, we had just done a video on it. You know, you look at the prominent players that were releasing at that time. You had Tyler, the Creator, you had Kendrick, you had Jay-Z, you had Brockhampton. But Playboi Carti completely separated himself, especially from the trap lane, because if you look at that was coming out of New York. And then you look at what was happening in Atlanta, you had obviously Migos, Future, Young Thug, Gucci Mane was dropping too. So it was a breath of fresh air. Yeah. And do you think that's how he made his name back then?
100%. And I mean, obviously a lot of the hype came from Magnolia, but if you look at like the album sales for the self-titled, it only sold 28K first week, but then a year later it ended up selling 500K. So people slowly started to see like, fuck, like this guy's music is really different.
It's
like,
a cult.
He's
It's a,
out there.
yeah, it's a cult. It's a cult mixtape for sure.
Yeah,
And
100%.
you look at a lot of the Carti landscape right now. I feel as if a lot of people would put ad-lib in front of Playboi Carti, but I think that's just the thing of when people got really introduced to Playboi Carti.
Yeah.
Because there was still that underground sort of niche to him, right?
100%. And people don't realize that like there's actually a lot of like dope double entendres even in like the song titles and some of the bars. If you look at number 9, for example, you know, obviously it relates to one of the handguns that's called the number 9, and it
Yeah.
also relates to a Japanese fashion label. So he talks about, you know, putting his number 9 in his number 9s, which is, it's dope. It's dope to see him, you know, kind of be creative with his bars in that way. And to me, like I said, he totally immersed me in his world, and it sounded like nothing I had ever heard before in the trap scene.
Okay, so what would you say is your favorite song from it?
My favorite song.
You had to choose one of them. You're playing this
mean,
you're playing this in your car
probably
forever.
Woke Up Like This. I know it's one of the popular ones, but the chemistry between Uzi and Cardi was just perfect, man.
I would probably go with Half and Half. I think Half and Half is probably one of my
Let
favorite.
It Go is also up there for me.
That is true.
His flows on Let It Go are out of this world.
Even number 9. Number 9 was probably my first standout track on that mixtape, and I remember I was bumping it at such an early time, and I was like, "Fuck, why does this work? He's not really doing much. The production is so minimalistic, but why does this work?" And like that's what's crazy about Playboi Carti.
It sounds like a soundtrack to like an old arcade video game.
That is, you feel
You
like
know
you're
what I
playing
mean?
fucking Zelda too.
Yeah.
Like it just, you always feel like you're kicking on the couch, smoking a fat blunt, playing Nintendo. Like that's
awesome.
that's what I feel
Yeah.
like when I'm listening to Playboi Carti, and that's why I do have a lot of respect for his discography. I know I'm not a big fan of Whole Lotta Red, but if you look at, you know, even just the type of quality and diversity sometimes that he does put up, he still has it.
I do think that Dial-It and, you know, his self-titled are two of the best, you know, trap projects that we've gotten in recent time. There's no one that compares to that. You know
That
what
is
I mean?
very
To that
true.
diversity.
Thank you guys for watching the whole video. Hit that subscribe button to join the family. We're doing weekly reviews. We're giving you guys all the updates in the industry. Plus, we have our series called What to Expect, where we actually take you through the album before it drops. Plus, if you guys want to chat with us, you guys could join our Discord server. The link is in the bio. You guys could talk hip hop with us there. Thank you guys for watching again. And guys, I'll see you on the next one.